I'm playing this song, You Are So Beautiful to Me, because my next guest is, such a beautiful person in my life. She has been a friend, a mentor, an artist to look up to and aspire to be like. She's just that person to everyone. She is mother to us all. And if you have been in her presence, if you have done a show with her or been in the New York theater community particularly, then you probably feel the same way. This is Denise Burse, everybody. Mm-hmm. Ain't she pretty, y'all?
Hi, how are you, Angela?
How are you, my friend?
Good. I'm glad to see your face.
I'm happy to see yours too. Now, where are you?
I'm actually in New York, but I leave in about a week to go back to Atlanta to shoot another episode of the project I'm working on down there.
Yes! So we're working on a project in your hometown in Atlanta.
My hometown, yes.
Are you enjoying it?
I am very much. Yeah, it's a great group of people, and it's a nice mixture of young artists and some seasoned artists. And I've met some new people that I, have just thoroughly enjoyed. And so, yeah, I'm having a great time. It's been kind of sad too, because my parents are deceased, and I go home now, and it's kind of bittersweet, because I know I don't get to see them. And this last time, I remember going to visit the gravesite, and my mother and my stepfather are buried in the same area. And I stood there for the longest time, and I started weeping. I'm trying not to well up now, because I thought, this would be a time when I could spend time with them, that I could talk about the kinds of projects I've been working on and the kinds of accomplishments. Because just coming out of COVID, the first project I did out of COVID was to shoot a movie in Atlanta. And so, it's like, so every time I've been back there now, it's been just kind of weird that in the last 6 months, that's been most of the work that I've done, was to shoot something in Atlanta. And it reminded me of a time when my mother was very ill.
Mm-hmm.
She'd had major surgery. I didn't mean to start up on this kind of one, but it's
no, this is
so
no.
And I was going back and forth every week or two, and I remember sitting in her kitchen one night and just crying out to God and saying, I can't keep requesting Peter to allow me to do this. I'm dipping into our savings in a way that, I'm not replenishing because I'm here and I can't work. And I said, God, I need you to provide a way for me to be here that also makes provision for our household. And I was so worried that, I wasn't going to be able to continue supporting them. And about 2 weeks after that visit, I got home, and I got a call from a guy, Roger Bob, that had just done a movie. I had just done a movie with him in New York. Mm-hmm. And he called and said, look, I'm working on a new project that's going to start shooting soon. I thought about you, and I need you to send the tape in right away. He said, I don't have a script or anything yet, but just, take this scene that I'm going to send you and put it on tape. And that was before you did a lot of self-taping,
Yes.
It's the norm now. But I was like, a camera, a person, I had to round up these people at the very last minute. Yeah. And I did the tape and sent it in, and it was to shoot the pilot for the original House of Payne. And so it was Tyler Perry who God used in a mighty way to ensure that I had work in Atlanta, and could stay for a period of time, overtime, to make sure that my parents were cared for. So, Wow. So Atlanta has real significance for me, even though I've been away for 30 years plus.
Yeah.
It's home. no matter what. You know, I step off the plane and immediately it's like, oh,
Mhm.
to see family. I'm going to see friends, and at the same time, work. So, yeah.
So funny. I'm not from Atlanta, but I have that same feeling.
Yeah. Well, you spend a lot of time there now because of the show. So, yeah, it
Yeah.
grows on you quickly. It really grows on you quickly.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about, and I think largely because there's something about seeing people who look like you in
Mm-hmm.
positions of power,
Yes.
um, who are really moving and shaking and changing the environment there for our well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's a loving energy that comes from that too, that you feel like you're part of it. You know, you fit in, that there's a welcoming embrace, so to speak, that says, oh yay, glad to see you, and come on
Mm-hmm.
in, you know, let's sit down and have a piece of cake.
And some sweet tea. It is so true.
Yeah.
What is, knowing that mom and dad are gone, and I know how much you cared for them, and I mean physically cared
Yeah.
for them. Um, what is Mother's Day like for you these days?
Um, well, the last couple of Mother's Days in particular, it's been kind of it's been bittersweet, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I wasn't able to go obviously last year because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said, this year I realized I'm going to miss it by a week of not being there. But it's been mostly that I've not been able to talk to her about the things that have gone on, you know, in the last few years, particularly in the last 13 or 14 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also realizing that um, I think the loss of our son is more prevalent to me right now because
Mm-hmm.
of some of those things. And it's probably because navigating the 21st lynching, you know, it's been a season of remembering young lives in a way that what would we have said to our son? You know, what would we have said to him to prepare him to navigate this life that this lifestyle that we're in right now? And how often would our hearts have been beating fast when he was out alone or with friends before he came back home? So I felt the angst of what parents have been going through a lot more intensely, and I think it has intensified the loss, not every day, but in some ways that I had not expected to experience.
Mm-hmm.
And not being able to talk through some of that with my mom has been particularly emotional for me. And so this Mother's Day has been particularly intense. That's the only way I can describe it. The loss is renewed in a way that I haven't navigated before, and I'm trying to learn some things about myself, what that means for me moving forward,
Mm-hmm.
and how the lesson can be paid forward for somebody else who might be in a similar situation. Because I always think about the lesson's not just for me; it's always for someone else. It's
Yeah.
teach somebody else about their situation, or help them, or comfort them in a way that they haven't yet received. So it's been an interesting process for me the last couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah. You've always been, for as long as I've known you, you've been an empath. You've been this person that you would feel something I was going through before I told anyone.
Oh, wow.
And you'd call and say, hey, I'm just calling to check on you.
Sure, yeah.
You know?
But thank you for saying that, because that's a gift from God. That's a connection in the spirit that I know exists. And it doesn't exist with everybody, but some people are important enough to me, first of all, that I'm always, tuned in to what they might be going through, what they need. And then there are other times when God brings them across my heart. Immediately I say, okay, something's happening and I really need to check in and find out. And I always say, it's just a love check. I just want to make sure
That's what you said. That's what you said. It's a love check.
are you all right? It's what's going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, it's usually a situation that is okay, but there are those times when I call just at the moment that they need to say, something's happening. I need to talk through it. I need to work through it or whatever. And so I'm grateful and I know it's God, because, our lives get busy. And unfortunately, we push stuff to the side and say, oh, I'll get to it in a minute. And sometimes a minute is too late.
Yeah.
It's really too late.
Yeah.
And I've had that happen a couple of times during COVID, and I have tried to remind myself to be far more conscious of that.
Mm-hmm.
I was good about it before, but far more conscious about that now because, like I said, a minute is a long time, and a minute too late is
too late.
It's just disastrous for both people.
Yeah. The reason why I say that is because, I have seen you go through some unimaginable things. The loss of your son, the loss of your parents. And I wonder, besides your husband, do you have people doing that for you?
I'm blessed because I have several people who do it, and I'm usually not expecting to hear from them. And they will do exactly what you said. It's just a love check. Auntie, you crossed my mind. And these are not people who are blood relatives. I mean, they call and check in, and it's young people, and I'm really pleased about that because it reminds me that in some way, some small way, that I've sown into their lives and that they are responding in a way that says, I appreciate you, I value you, and so I want to check in on you. Or sometimes I've got a niece that's living in California now. She used to live in New York, and she was only like a few blocks away, so I always ran into her. I could always say, hey, meet me on the corner of such and such, and we would just walk and catch up.
Mm-hmm.
But being that far away now, I'm always concerned about her differently,
Yeah.
It's not just the distance, it's the newness of the environment. The people are changing now. The support system that she was accustomed to is no longer there. And so I know she's navigating, trying to put those things into place, but she never hesitates to let me know if it's during her prayer time or some other experience. If I come across her heart, she immediately stops and either calls or texts and says, I just want you to know I was thinking about you, want to make sure everything's okay. If there's anything I can do, please get in touch with me right away. And I've got a young person at church who has sort of filled that gap for me because she does the same thing. And then there's an older woman who was a student of my mother's when she was teaching high school. And we all ended up attending Spelman College at some point in our lives. And so she stayed in touch with my mother though over the years and would visit her often, especially as her health started to decline. And I remember her speaking at my mother's service and talking about how impactful their relationship had been on her becoming a teacher, her mom, now grandmother, and all of those things. And she saw how much I had to do even after my mother had passed. And she said, I just would like to keep in touch with you. And I said, oh, I'd be so delighted. And she is really like an older sister, sort of young replacement mom. And so she checks on me as well. And I always try to let her know when I'm coming to Atlanta. So if there's a wiggle room of an hour even that I can speak. So yeah, there are. And I'm really, really grateful though for those relationships, because they help sustain you in a way that you're not even aware of sometimes, until you get the call or you get the text. So
Yeah.
God can
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, because it's something about your trauma when it happens to you. It fuels love in you. I mean, you go, I talk to you anyway, and I feel like I'm your sister.
You are.
and, and I
You
talk to
are.
you, and you just lost your mother, and we will talk about it for a moment. Oh my goodness, how you doing, Denise? How you doing? And after you tell me that, you're like, now tell me how you are. It just,
Yeah.
it just fuels a sense of love in you that is extremely mothering. I don't know if that was a gift from your son, but it's extremely mothering and nurturing. And you feel like when you've told you all your problems that you've been healed because I shared it with you, because you feel seen. That's it. You feel seen
Ah,
and heard. So I thank you for that. And I often leave you feeling horribly guilty because I'm like, oh my God, she just let me talk all about my problem.
well, it's funny that you said you feel seen. I think that for me, what I've tried to learn over the years is how to listen. And I find that if you're really looking at the person, then you listen better. Um, and so when I'm talking to somebody, I really try to see them. I try to block out the other stuff and just really focus in on them, because then I'm going to hear them better. I'm going to listen in a way with some intention to it. Um, and you learn so much more when you think you know somebody. When you really think you know somebody, just really listen to what they have to say to you while you're connecting in a way eye to eye, and you will learn things that you never thought they would tell you. um, and so over the years, I have tried to start doing that. And I know Peter sometimes will remember, he said, "Did you hear what I said?" And then I have to stop and say, "I wasn't looking at him. I didn't hear a word he said because I was too busy, focusing on too many different things." And so I have to apologize to him for that. Um, but that's the way you learn. Look, listen, and learn. And you can carry it in any aspect of your life. It transfers to your job, it transfers to your ministry, it transfers to your community. It just, it's a transfer kind of lesson. And so I've really started trying to be better about doing that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You your career spans 30 years.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
have gone, I mean, you have gone from being the newbie in New York, I'm fresh off the block, the fresh face. You've gone from, hustling and, trying to make things happen, to being what I call now a legend in the field. I know you wouldn't say that. I'm saying it though. Um,
Thank you.
you're someone whose work is extraordinarily respected and whose humanity is also respected. So that's what I would call right now. Like, what's this season for you? What are you feeling this particular season in your career is?
Um, hmm. I, I think it's starting to be a season of much, much, much gratitude. Being able to look back over that 30-year career and say, I was allowed to learn some things in ways that I never would have had I not made the move from Atlanta to New York, first and foremost. It taught me how to survive in ways that I probably would not have learned had I stayed in Atlanta, because I had family. I had a support system there that was just really, you know, if I had needed to go home for a meal, if I had needed to do whatever to support myself or move back home, I could have, because those resources were readily available. But
Mm-hmm.
in New York, I had to learn how to rely on prayer and myself,
Mm-hmm.
and that was such a maturing for me. I'd never lived in an apartment. I'd always lived in a house. So just navigating a building with tons of strangers in it, and trying to discern who you let into your personal space as a single woman in New York, it's like, who do you trust? And that was one of the major lessons. And being in the entertainment industry without any real connections, because all of those were left at home as well. And so I started to rely on friends who were here, who I knew had made some inroads, and then I attached myself to people who were close to them, because they were in the industry as well. And
Mm-hmm.
one of those people got me an interview with an agent, because I didn't have one. I mean, my agent didn't transfer to New York, and so I couldn't get any real auditions or anything going, because they don't see you unless you have an agent who submits you. And so, it was that vicious cycle all over again. But I was grateful for relationships. And Peter
Mm-hmm.
teaches his kids about this all the time at Columbia.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships are key. We only think about it in the corporate world, or relationships in ministries, but relationships in our industries are absolutely essential.
Mm-hmm.
Jasmine Guy, who I had known as a kid in Atlanta growing up, was already here in New York. And she actually introduced me to someone who introduced me to her agent. Uh, So it was like that kind of situation where um, a relationship, no matter how close you are to the person, is sometimes the foothold. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it opens the door that you need at that very moment. And as a result, I never worked with Jasmine. It wasn't that kind of relationship. It was
Mm-hmm.
it was a familial relationship in terms of both growing up in Atlanta, both having started careers there before moving to New York, and a generous, merciful heart that really just sort of started my career here. Um, so relationships are essential.
Yeah.
They should be nurtured in a way that lets the person know you value their worth
Mm-hmm.
and what they bring to the relationship, and that should be respected in a way that says, I'm grateful for what you've been able to do for me, and I hope that even if I can't do it for you, if you send someone across my path, I'll be in a position to do it for them.
Yeah.
It's all about paying it forward, paying it forward,
Mm-hmm.
paying it
Yeah.
forward. Um, and
Did
what
you ever imagine Atlanta would be what it is now? When you left Atlanta to come here, did you
Oh, right.
imagine?
I know, right? And I go back enough now and see friends who stayed, and see friends who have migrated there from other places,
Mm-hmm.
and how much they enjoy their lifestyle there, and how much they're thriving in the industry there. And I only thought about the change, the dramatic change that would take place in Atlanta when the Olympics came. And I kept saying, oh my God, because, I always saw it as this sleepy little hamlet, a city that was on the rise, that was beginning to grow, but hadn't really become urbane in the sense that you think about other metropolises.
Mm-hmm.
But when the Olympics came, I said, oh my goodness, my hometown is going to be so different now, because all of these other people are going to start to come, and they're going to settle because they're going to love the place. But I
Mm-hmm.
said, but it's also going to bring some of the ills of big city living, and that was my biggest concern. You know, it was like the gangs, the drugs, the crime, all of that comes with big city living was also going to come, and it did,
Yeah.
but at the same time, it provided it provided an avenue for growth in our industry in a way that is really unbelievable, unmatchable
Yeah.
in how many ways. Yeah,
I know. Yeah.
yeah.
So what has do you have any regrets in these 30 years? In these 30 years of being, wow.
You
In
know, it's funny because I think I did have one, but it has been so squashed, if you will. Um, I moved to California because I thought I'm going to try out a new environment and see what I can make of it. Plus, that was when television and film was really the cornerstone. It was thriving there, and so you thought, this is where I'll go,
Mhm.
um, and try and break into television and film. And I was staying out there, and I auditioned for a television movie that was done on PBS. It was a Thurgood Marshall story.
Yeah, you did it with Scott.
I did it, and I was about to say I did it with Scott, and it shot in on the East Coast though, so I had to leave California and come back to shoot here. And while I was here, I kept saying, I said, Lord, do I go back to California? Do I stay and try to parlay this into something on this coast? Because I was staying with a friend, and I knew eventually I was going to have to find my own place. And, there was no real support system for me there yet. But everybody, a year or two later, all moved out there. So I wasn't sure. And so that was my regret for a couple of years. But then I met married Peter, and it was like, that wouldn't have happened had I been living in California.
Yeah.
I needed to be back in New York on this coast for everything else to unfold for my life in the way that it did. And so it was a regret, but only temporarily lived. And the lesson that I learned was I can't worry about the what if. I have to make myself concentrate on the what is.
Mhm.
What is in front of me?
Mhm.
What is my life like right now?
Mhm.
And so the regrets sort of diminish. They don't exist in the sense that other people talk about regret. No.
Yeah. So you mentioned Peter,
Yes.
my brother.
That's
You all have been married over 26 years now?
27 actually.
27 years.
Yeah.
And you all are couple mentors to Scott and I. You are that couple we look to have just gleaned so much from. For people who say, oh, relationships can't work in show business, they don't last. What's your secret? What would you say your secret is?
I don't know if it's a secret to the extent that we had to learn it very early.
Mm-hmm.
Peter was doing a show, and right after we got married, it was a tour. So he was getting ready to go on the road. And unfortunately, in some sense, the show first went to Atlanta. And so I thought, I'm going home. But it also was very clear to me that we didn't get to do a honeymoon. I mean, the wedding was over, and like a couple of days later, we were packing for him to do this tour. And so we learned from that if one of you is on the road, you cannot let a large gap of time happen without the other one going to visit. You can't allow the road to take over the person who's at home trying to run things, making decisions without your input. We learned some real life lessons in terms of how to navigate your relationship when that distance is necessary, but what to do. And it came down to understanding how you navigate your contract when you know in advance that you're going to have to do that. You ask for a plane ticket, a train ticket, whatever, to get the person there. It's part of your contractual agreement. And you know that if you're expecting to be gone for a long time and that stretches out over another month or two, then you add on another ticket so that it can go to the next station of that contract. So we learned some things very early on in our marriage. I mean, almost immediately, how to self care for the relationship, but also how to professionally negotiate the contract of the business side of the contract. And then the other thing I think was you're reminded constantly, and biblically it says don't go to bed if you're angry without first working through it. But that's also a wider statement in terms of you have to communicate. You just have to communicate. You have to talk it through all the time. There's not, even though I've learned some things, there's not a thing that comes up in an audition or a job or a contract. Or right now, I'm going through some things, and I always talk to Peter. Say, tell me what you think about this. Tell me what your take would be. What would you do if you were in my shoes? Because I trust his intellect, number one, and I know that he has my well-being uppermost in his mind, and so I want to hear what he has to say, so that I can have additional information negotiating when I go back in. So those things are paramount to to for us anyway. They're paramount in terms of having the relationship work, and having a good sense of humor. Peter will make you laugh even when you don't want to, and sometimes I'm really upset and mad, and he will find a way. So it wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And so I think a good sense of humor is critical as well. Yeah. So
Yeah.
communication, a good sense of humor, and really trusting that the person's got your back.
Yeah.
Trusting that they've got your back.
So you taught us all of that. All of that. When we first got married, you taught us. You told us don't go long without.
Yeah.
And so we had a 3-week rule.
Yeah.
We visited each other. We negotiated plane tickets.
Right.
So thank you.
So,
You taught us that. What does and this is my last 2 questions, but although I could talk for all day to you, what does a 30-year career, what has it cost you? What has it cost you?
What has it cost me? I'm not sure that I've had to pay the price in a way that some people told me that I would. I remember when we were pregnant, I had a long conversation with Ruby D, someone who's
your twin.
Someone whose career in life I really admired. I had a chance, and we were working on a show, and we were on the road together. And she found out after that I had gotten pregnant, and she said to me, she said, Denise, she said, I want you to understand that as the mother, you're going to have to make some real changes, and those changes will automatically affect your career. You're going to have to sit down for a minute. And I thought, no, I'll take the baby with me. And I remember thinking about the friends that I had in the industry who had become mothers, and how much we centered our lives around playing with the kid while we were at rehearsal or whatever. And it had such an impact on me to hear it from her. And I knew she was a mom, and she said, You have to look to career not as a sprint, but as a long distance journey, and prepare yourself while you're waiting so that you can come back. And that resonated with me in a way that I've got young friends now who are new parents. I've got a friend who's expecting in a few short weeks for her first kid, and her career is like blowing up, you know. And I hope if she doesn't hear this now, that I can tell her at some point, you know, this is precious time. You'll never get it back. It is your most perfect role. And if you're not willing to step into it in a way that ensures a bond that can never be broken, I don't care what the offer is to play someone else. You better play your best as that child's mother so that whatever you do afterwards is just icing on the cake. It's easy when they're infants. You could just, throw them in your knapsack and go pack some diapers, put
Yeah.
breast pump in a bottle and take it with you, whatever. But to not have an opportunity to really bond with your kid, I don't care what kind of role it is, you'll never get that time back. You'll never get that time back. And I think it's important to know that so that you make the wisest choice about the role you really, really, really want to play. And because your career will be there. And that's what Miss D was really trying to impress upon me, I never had to face that, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I was looking forward to it. And I think her wisdom still plays today. My friend Latanya Richardson Jackson, she had Zoe. Zoe's a grown woman now who is thriving. She has a career of her own. It's just to watch from infancy, the kind of life that they've given her, and the fact that Latanya sat down. Many people don't know it because her career came back in such a mighty way. But she had time to bond with Zoe, and they are close to this day as a result of that. And her career is unmatched. She never lost anything as a result of making the wise choice, to my mind. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but
Yes, it did. It did. What is your prayer for the world today? The state that we're in.
wow.
What's your prayer?
Wow. I have to first of all, because of, as I said, the present 21st century lynching that our people have gone through and are still trying to navigate, I would like to know that we as parents are learning how to nurture our young people's spirits so that they still have a sense of freedom and purpose and joy and some sense of hope moving forward. That is my everyday prayer. And I said, I know that it's specific. It doesn't mean that I don't include other people's lives. I do. But I think that we have to find a way to continue to nurture our young people so that we know that they are protected, and that there's some sense of respect and peace that we can bring to the rest of the people who will impact, encounter, engage in their lives, and that they will be compassionate and respectful enough to not harm them, to not harm them. That's my prayer for the world, because I think that if we can get other people to make the change that is necessary to ensure that that happens for us, the peace will come. The peace will come. You know, there's a scripture that says if we turn from our wicked ways, God will heal the land, the people in it. And there's so much wickedness right now. So, I pray that we can do that. That we can do that. That we can really cry out to God in a way that He hears our cry and heals the land and the people who inhabit it, so that we can all have a sense of peace and safety moving forward.
Amen. And lastly, I want to know this nurturing spirit that you have, this mother, global mother aura that's around you. Was that something that was, part of your upbringing, or did that come with your faith?
I think they were intertwined without realizing it. My grandmothers, both maternal and paternal, had such strong faith. I mean beyond just the church going, auxiliary ministry involvement. I saw them pray for their children, who were my mother, my father, and their siblings. And I would always hear them say, God sees you and He knows what you need. You have to make sure that you understand that in a way that you can provide the same needs for other people. My grandmother would go out of her way to help someone who needed a place to stay, who needed a meal, food, money, whatever. And I think watching her do that with strangers who then ended up being called uncle, auntie, cousin, whatever, and they were not blood relatives, I thought, well, I guess that's how you're supposed to live your life. Your family that you're born into is one thing, but it's supposed to be expanded to a larger humanity, to a larger community, to something outside the four walls of your home.
Yes.
And you're supposed to do it in a way that's loving and considerate and compassionate, because so many people are not getting that on a regular basis in their life. Their homes don't provide that. And so I guess growing up as a little girl, watching her do it, watching them do it, really, it was just sort of in me.
Yeah. Well, we love you.
I love you.
And
too.
I speak not for just Scott and I when I say we. I speak for a community of artists.
Well, I thank you.
That love you. If they could write you notes right now, you would see it. Love you, admire you, thank you for being there for us, and thank you for choosing to survive. Because you survived, we get to experience the you that has brought us, pulled us along when we were trying to survive. So thank you for surviving.
That's so kind. Thank you. It's been my honor to stand with you and Scott over these years.
They need it, yeah. You write it, you sing, you succeed, yeah. We different in here for a reason. spirit.